We hear about the incredible potential of AI pretty much every single day. But behind all that hype, there's a huge hidden crisis going on. A massive number of AI projects are actually failing. So today, we're going to break down why that is and, more importantly, how you can make sure yours doesn't become just another statistic. Just look at this number for a second. 85%. According to major sources like Gartner and Tech Republic, that, believe it or not, is the shocking percentage of AI and machine learning projects that just fail to deliver on what they promised. That's a staggering figure that should honestly make anyone in business just stop and think. So yeah, that brings us to the big question we're going to unpack right now. Why is this happening? Is the technology just not ready? Is it a talent problem? Well, turns out the answer is a lot more fundamental than any of that. To really understand the solution, we have to get our heads around the problem first. This isn't just some interesting statistic. For a lot of companies, this is a full-blown business crisis that wastes millions of dollars, countless hours, and it just erodes confidence in what should be a totally transformative technology. So what's the real diagnosis here? While the failure isn't coming from bad algorithms or incompetent teams, the root cause is a systemic failure to use the right methodology. Companies are trying to build this revolutionary AI with completely outdated blueprints. To really get what's going on, let's kind of perform an autopsy on these failed projects. We can pretty much group all the reasons for failure into three main categories. The very first failure? It happens way before anyone writes a single line of code or even looks at a piece of data. It is a failure of strategy. This is where projects are put on a path to fail right from the get-go. And these are the usual suspects. You've got teams that jump in without a clear business case or any justified return on investment. They get totally swept up in vendor hype, they overpromise what the AI can do, and often they try to boil the ocean by tackling the absolute hardest problem first, instead of looking for a quick, achievable win. Okay, so let's say the strategy is sound. The next place projects completely fall apart is with the data itself. And this is probably the single most common and critical failure point. Because in the world of AI, data isn't just a part of the project, it is the project. We've all heard this saying, right? But for AI, it's basically the absolute law of the universe. It's not just about having enough data, it's about having the right, high-quality data. If your data is flawed or biased or incomplete, your AI model is going to be too. It's really as simple as that. And this brings us to the final major reason for failure, which I like to call the reality gap. This is that dangerous, treacherous space between a model that works perfectly in a controlled lab and the messy, chaotic, unpredictable real world. So many teams fall into what's called the proof of concept trap. They build something that works great on a clean, static data set, but then it just completely breaks when it hits production. In the real world, data drifts, which just means the patterns in the data change over time, and that makes a model trained on old data pretty much useless really fast. This is where theory meets a very, very harsh reality. You want a perfect and honestly kind of hilarious example of this reality gap? Look no further than the Haneda Hotel in Japan. It was supposed to be the world's first all-robot hotel. But the in-room assistant thought snoring was a request for help, the concierge bots couldn't answer basic questions, and the bellhop robots couldn't even reach most of the rooms. The whole thing was a massive failure because the robots just couldn't handle the unpredictability of real human beings. Okay, so we've diagnosed the problem pretty thoroughly. Now let's talk about the cure. The solution here requires a fundamental shift in how we think about managing these projects, moving away from an old, rigid model to something new and much more dynamic. And this contrast you see here is key. The old way, it's known as waterfall, is sequential and super rigid. You build the whole thing from start to finish and only test it at the very end. The new way is iterative. It's a flexible, cyclical process that's all about constant feedback and adapting to change. For AI, where you are literally discovering insights as you go, that old way is just a recipe for disaster. Okay, so this is the crucial takeaway right here. An AI project is not a traditional IT project. They are not the same thing. In a software project, you define the functionality and then you build it. But in an AI project, the functionality actually emerges from the data. You just can't rigidly plan for discovery. This whole realization leads us to a new kind of methodology, one that's built from the ground up to handle the unique challenges of data science and AI. Now, you might be thinking, hey, this just sounds like Agile, and you'd be partially right. Agile is iterative, which is great, but standard Agile was designed for software development, not data science. It has some big gaps.
The real key is to be iterative and data-centric, focusing on improving the data itself, not just adding new features.
So what does this data-centric approach look like in the real world? Well, one of the leading examples is a methodology called CPMAI, or Cognitive Project Management for AI. It's specifically designed to be both data-centric and iterative, providing a structured approach that's tailored to what AI projects actually need. And here's what that looks like. CPMAI breaks the project into 6 really clear cyclical phases. But notice this, half of them, understanding and preparation, are focused entirely on the data before you even start modeling. This structure makes sure you're building on a solid foundation, and you're constantly looping back to refine your approach.
So, after all this analysis of failure and all this talk about process, what's the one thing you should really take away from all this? Well, it can be boiled down into a simple but really powerful mantra.
Here it is. This is your recipe for success. Think big about the overall strategic goal. Start small, with a manageable, specific problem. Don't try to boil the ocean. And most importantly, iterate often, constantly learning, adapting, and improving in small, manageable cycles. So why does this work? Because it de-risks the entire process. Instead of one massive all-or-nothing bet, you're making a whole series of small, intelligent bets. Each cycle gives you new insights, it reduces uncertainty, and it moves you closer to delivering real, tangible business value. And that leaves us with one final question for you to think about. Take a look at your own AI initiatives. Are you following a rigid, outdated model and just kind of hoping for the best? Or are you embracing a data-centric, iterative approach? Because the methodology you choose, that might just be the difference between success and becoming another one of the 85%.